Very impressed. But he is one of our state senators for Florence, correct?
Right.
And I don't know a lot about you, and so I'm going to be quiet now and sit in and let you come tell us.
All right.
We need to make sure we vote on the approval of the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We had the second. We need to vote to approve the agenda. Thank you, Melinda. We didn't.
All in favor?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I need people to keep down straight and narrow. And now, you can come.
I love somebody who can follow the Robert Rules of Order. That's great. Do we need the microphone? Or do you like the mic?
Yes.
Okay, then I will use the mic there. It is a pleasure, and it was my pleasure to help you with the dress. You know, it's funny, when you've been married 30 years, a couple of things you realize is that when something's not quite right, tell me about it. Like if you've got parsley between my teeth, I'd rather somebody say, you got a big green piece between your teeth instead of letting me go all day. So, and it was a beautiful dress too. When I had the conversation, I thought it was mauve, but was it pink? Hot pink? What do you think?
It was pretty hot. Pink.
Pretty hot pink? All right. That's another thing in 30 years of marriage and a daughter, is that you learn colors like fuchsia and mauve and colors I never knew were actual colors before I got married. It's a pleasure to be with you. I bring greetings from Florence County. Matter of fact, we got one gentleman over here who knows Florence County, used to work in Florence County. We are known for more than just our Buc-ee's. We get that a lot. We are the only state with Buc-ee's, and who's been to our Buc-ee's? All right. Did you chop brisket or sliced brisket? What did you go for? Chopped brisket. I'm a chopped brisket fan. I prefer that over the sliced there. It's unusual to see me without my wife. My wife, her name is Charisse. She's actually speaking in Bardwell County, at the Bardwell County GOP tonight, while Alan is at the Horry County GOP. So that's one of the advantages of we're the only ticket that has a governor and a lieutenant governor listed, is that we're able to be 2 and 3 places on the same evening. So it's grateful to be with you. I'm going to cover not a lot because I want to open it up for questions. I love talking policy. I love talking about what are the issues in the Senate, about what Alan and I are going to do as governor and lieutenant governor. By the way, I don't know if you saw the takeaway from the SC GOP poll. It closed last night. From the debate Thursday until last night, they ran a poll, anyone in the SC GOP statewide, and they released the results today. Almost 1,000 respondents. And we came in number 1 at 35%. Second place was at 20, and then down from there. So we are working really, really hard to hear from people. And instead of talking to you, we want to hear from you. And candidly, that's one reason why we're in such the lead, is we want to hear what's on people's mind. I am a senator from Florence County. My background is something you could read about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but it is the reason why I ran for the Senate. My undergraduate degree is in accounting. I've got an MBA in business. I did corporate finance and accounting work all over the world for a lot of years. My wife, her name is Charisse. We've been 30 years together. We've got a 25 and a 24-year-old. There was a point where in 2007, 2008, we decided that while corporate America was good, we wanted to put roots somewhere. So let's buy something. And that was when we first bought our dealership. It was the Ford dealership in Florence, South Carolina. So it was Mike Reichenbach Ford. And if you remember what year that was, 2008, we had the worst timing ever. 2008, buying a dealership as a first generation dealer, we almost lost everything. And I mean everything. She was a stay-at-home mom with 2 very young children at the time. And I came home many nights and said, honey, I don't know how we're going to make payroll. I don't know how we're going to continue to pay our quarterly taxes and to pay our interest payments and to pay our vendors, because the economy essentially shut down in 2008. The banks couldn't loan money. I don't know what it was like here in Saluda County, but it was really tough in Florence County there. People were losing their houses and their cars. So we managed that business, and we were able to stay afloat by cutting expense, by managing by a P&L, a profit and loss sheet, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement. I would walk around the dealership at night and turn off the computers to save electric costs. That's how fiscally responsible we were, not because we chose to be, it's because we were almost going to lose it all. And to look across from you people who are good, hardworking people, who have done nothing wrong other than to be in a bad economy and to have to lay them off when you know their husbands or their wives or their kids, and you know what that's going to do to them. Those are those sleepless nights that make small business what it is. And the reason that's where our heart is that 75% to 75 to 80% of all employment in South Carolina are small businesses. They're your plumbers, they're your hairstylists, they're your welders, they're your carpenters. So we love, Sharice and I, we love the large companies, the Boeings, the Lockheed Martins, the Volvos, but that's not the regular employment. Regular people are the ones who don't have a shareholder you could go to and raise more capital. We got to make it work on what we have. So that small business approach is what made us run for the Senate in 2022. Anybody know what the number one profession is in the Senate? Lawyers. 1 out of every 3 legislators in the House and the Senate is a lawyer. And I'm not indicting them. I got a lot of good attorney friends, and they do bring a perspective in the Senate and in the House. That's a welcome perspective. But when 1 out of every 3 are legislators, you gotta have to ask yourself, is it a balanced perspective? Or do we need more people who do know what it's like to wonder if you could make payroll next month? So that's what made us run. So that small business approach was number one. The second thing that we focus on in the Senate is law and order. I'm a 20-year sworn law enforcement officer. Long before I was ever in politics, I realized that there are folks who would do us harm without law enforcement. So I went to the academy. I got my commission as a Class 3 sworn law enforcement officer, went into SLED as a state constable, and then transferred over to DNR as a game warden. In a rural community like this, I generally look around to see if I've arrested anybody on DNR. And I don't think I have, because it's happened before, I can tell you. I pulled people over and they're like, wait a second, I bought cars from you. And I was like, oh my goodness, well, it doesn't mean that you didn't break the law. As game wardens, we work wherever they need us. So I've done bear patrol in upstate, in Pickens and Oconee County, and I've been all over the state. But I say law enforcement is so important because there are people who would do us harm. But the law enforcement side is really only as successful as judicial reform. Judicial reform is something that has to be addressed. We've got judges on the bench who are selected by the lawyer legislators. And let that sink in for a minute. If you're a judge and you are going to have a judgment call, one of those gray areas of a trial, and you know that this attorney and that attorney are both pleading their case before you, but this attorney in about 18 months is going to get to vote whether you keep your job. Can we really believe that there's not, and I'm not saying you're not a good person, but there's not a certain aspect of, oh, I got to let that weigh into my decision if it's gray. I'm not saying it's improper. I'm not saying that it's a malfeasance or that it's illegal. I'm saying human nature is self-preservation. And the fact that we as a legislature are one of only 2 states in the nation that we pick every one of our judges from the circuit court, family court, appellate court, and Supreme Court. And the the legislators get to pick them. That's like, I'm a Carolina Gamecock to the core, but that's like us. And I know we don't do great, but that would be like us picking our referees. We still may not do great as Gamecock, you get used to that, but that's how imbalanced it is when the lawyers get to pick the judges. I'm a big advocate of using the federal system. Let the governor pick with the advice and consent of the legislature, like letting the president pick with the advice and consent of the Senate. There's 3 ways to do it. There's the way we do it, only 1 of 2 states. There's letting the executive branch pick it with approval of the legislature, so you've got 2 bodies, or it's public elections. Some states do that. Georgia does that, Pennsylvania does that, Arizona does, several do that. California does that. Here's my concern with that. You don't necessarily get the best judges. You get the best politicians, you get people with the most amount of money, but you don't necessarily get the best judges. So there's not a perfect way to do it, but I think ours is flawed. And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the way law enforcement arrests people, and then folks get out on bond, career criminals, that catch and release and revolving door of, I've arrested you Thursday, and you're out again Friday morning. As a law enforcement officer, it is very discouraging. We need judges who will follow the rule of law, and who will be conservative on the bench, and will not try to adjudicate from the bench. Let them just follow the rule of law. And if we could get to that point, law enforcement has a much easier job because then they get to arrest the bad guys and judges follow the law to put them away. Magistrate judges is another element. And I'll bring that up briefly here. Magistrate judges are unique because they are not selected by the legislature. Legislature picks circuit court, family court, appellate court, and Supreme Court. You all know how magistrate judges are selected? Close, but not quite. It is only by the senator with the majority of the delegation's percentage a weighted vote. So you've got two senators here. You've got Billy Garrett and Shane Massey, but the senator with the majority of the weight gets to nominate the magistrates. And as long as they can pass the background check, have a college degree, and pass an exam, they get to be a magistrate judge. Now, there's some good magistrates, but there are 330 magistrate judges in South Carolina. If you take circuit court, family court, appellate court, and Supreme Court combined, there's only 120. And the reason magistrate judges are so important is that they can fine you up to $7,500. They can send you to jail for 30 days. They can absolutely disrupt your life. And unfortunately, what we learned as soon as we won the Senate race is that magistrate judges are often used to reward supporters. Within days of winning the race, we got phone calls from people who said, "You do know that we supported you, maximum donations to your campaign." We said, "Well, we appreciate that, we're grateful. And by the way, I'd love to be a magistrate judge." And you do know that we put signs up and we knocked the doors for you. And my daughter would love to be a magistrate judge. And we eventually said, "But why are you calling about that?" And then we learned how we do it here, that the senators nominate your magistrate judges. So what Sharice and I did is that we piloted a program, first in the state, where we have asked our sheriff, our county administrator, our solicitor, our public defender, the chairman of the Bar Association for Florence County, the chief administrator, the chief magistrate, the captain of the highway patrol, and the DNR captain. Ask them to be on what we call the magistrate screening committee. Every potential magistrate for Florence County has to go through the interview process with those 9 people. Every current magistrate who's up for their 4-year term has to go through the magistrate screening committee. Doesn't matter how much I like you, doesn't matter how much you donated, doesn't matter who you're related to. Transparency and accountability makes for a better judicial system. And that's a process that the Supreme Court Chief Justice loves and is trying to consider and adopting something similar to other state counties right there, so that constituents get more accountability and a better level of magistrate judge. The final reason that I ran, and candidly why Alan Wilson has me on his ticket. When Alan, I'll briefly talk about Alan. You probably know him, you've read about him. He's a 30-year combat veteran, did a tour in Iraq. His Humvee got hit by an IED, barely made it out, brought all of his men and women home on that tour. He was convoy commander, he's been a 15-year prosecutor, an Eagle Scout. He's a good man, and all that's great. But the reason I'm running with him, and I would consider leaving the state senate, is he came to me and he said, "If you were to be my state senator, tell me what's important to you." And I said, education matters, infrastructure matters, healthcare matters, all those things matter. But to me, the number one priority has to be families, has to be our children. And it has to be public policy putting in the guardrails to do things like give parental school choice, so that parents get to choose where their kids get educated. I'm a product of public education every day of my life. And if public education is the right option for your child, man, great. If it's a Christian education, so be it. If it's homeschool, if it's charter school, let the parents choose. But ultimately, the reason family is so important to me, and that's faith in family, but it starts with family led to my faith, is that in 1971, there was a 14-year-old girl who gets pregnant by her 15-year-old boyfriend. And she tells her name's Beverly, she tells her boyfriend, "I'm pregnant." And her 15-year-old boyfriend says, "Well, I'm out of here, I want no part of that." So Beverly goes home and she tells her mom, "Mom, I screwed up and I'm pregnant. Now what do I do?" And mom says, "Well, Beverly, you've got 3 choices. You can abort the baby, that's the cleanest option. You can birth the baby and put the baby in foster care, or you can birth the baby and you can keep the baby. But if you keep the baby, you can't come home because I can't afford you. So Beverly, at 14 and absolutely alone, makes the decision to birth me. And then she puts me in foster care. The reason I know her story is that at 18, she found me to tell me her story. So she puts me in foster care, and I bounce around foster care a little bit. But I eventually am at a foster family, and the mom and dad, they had children of their own, they were older, but her sister came over to see the new foster baby. And that sister and husband, their name was Ed and Shirley Reichenbach. Now you're Miss Biedenbach, and we're Reichenbach. We don't pronounce it Reichenbach in German. In German, anybody know how you pronounce it?
Reichenbach.
Reichenbach, a little bit more guttural. German is not a pretty language. Reichenbach. I am actually Mike Reichenbach from Ed and Shirley Reichenbach. And mom and dad were obviously very, very German in a Swiss-German farm town of 2 stoplights. They were older. They had no good reason to adopt me. They had children of their own. But mom and dad would say, we felt on our heart God telling us to adopt you, that you were meant to be ours. And we didn't know how we were going to raise a black child, because Ed and Shirley Reichenbach are as white as they come, Swiss German. And they would say things like, we didn't know if we had to put sunscreen on your skin. We didn't know how to do your hair. We didn't know how to raise a black child in 1971, but we figured it out because God told us to adopt you. And that your life would not be determined by the fact that you don't have our DNA or that you don't have our blood. Your life would be determined by the fact that God has a plan for each and every one of us. It's providential. He's sovereign. There are no mistakes. You don't always get happy beginnings or happy endings, but he has a plan, and they adopted me. And the reason I tell that story is for a lot of years, you'd never heard that story. My resume talks about my valedictorian from high school, or my accounting degree, or my corporate finance work, and all the things that I was really proud of. But I didn't tell that part of my story because I wasn't very proud of a 14-year-old biological mother who had to be called a whore and a harlot and who was alone. Or I was never really proud of the fact that her family really disassociated from her. I never knew why mom and dad adopted me. I never knew why would you do that. When your friends would say like, well, you're going to adopt a little brown baby? You're German. You speak German in a farm town. But I realized this side of heaven, I'll never know, and that's okay. But one day God's going to have that conversation with me. But in the meantime, I've got a responsibility to do more than I have done to make life better for people. I love success. Success has been good. We now have 3 dealerships, a Ford dealership, a Volkswagen dealership, a Chevrolet dealership in Florence and Hilton Head. Life's been very good to us, and we worked really hard for it. But there's a time when we shifted from a focus on success to a focus on significance. How do we leave this place better than we found it? This place called Earth that is messy and that is hard and doesn't always look like the picturesque what we would want. So when Alan asked me, I said, Alan, I'll tell you a story. I told him my story. I said, for the time I have on this earth, I want to impact families for the betterment of those who sometimes don't have a voice. Those 3,300 children in foster care who don't have a voice. The women who feel neglected and feel lost, who are bruised and who are battered. Those families that are barely getting by. How can we make life better? How can we reduce taxes? How can we figure out a way to create more affordability opportunities for people? And when Alan heard that answer, I thought he'd be like, ooh, I'm not so sure you're my right pick. Because I told him that I was always going to lead with my faith being my due north. Because I've got an obligation for a God that has given me this opportunity. And Alan said, Senator, you are my man. This is what we need. If we aren't leading our state with this, then what are we doing this for? And I want you to lead with that as your due north, and we will lead our office that way. So he asked, and I said, okay, make sure that this is what you signed up for. And here we are 4 months later, we're the only gubernatorial ticket who has named a lieutenant governor. And that's how convinced we are that this is the right fit to do it for South Carolina. So I'm going to stop there because that gives you a little bit about who I am, but I want to open it up for questions to see what might be on your mind, and then we'll go from there. All right.
I have a lot of questions.
Please. I love questions. That makes us better.
If we vote for Alan Wilson, will we also be voting for you?
That's a
Or is it?
great question. So in 2018, when they changed the Constitution to make the lieutenant governor and the governor a combined ticket, now in June, the primary, you will only vote for the governor. I am Alan's lieutenant governor, but only the gubernatorial candidates will be on the ballot in primary. So you have to vote for Alan Wilson. Now in November, the general election, it's both Alan and me on there. So it's a great question, but it'll only be Alan in June.
And, let's see, I had another question. Thank you. Let me think about it.
Okay, think about it. I'll tell you one quick story, might prompt another question. People often ask, how did you meet Alan? Fair question. Alan, as Attorney General, he has a lot of high-profile cases like the Murdaugh trial, but what folks don't realize is that his office does the work that a lot of folks don't want to talk about. He has the Human Trafficking Task Force and the ICAC Task Force. ICAC is an acronym, ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. Because family is so important to me, the President of the Senate came and asked me, what do you want to work on, Senator? You got the business side of it. You want to build? No, I want family. He said, okay, you will be on the Joint Committee on Children. It's made up of 3 appointees by the President of the Senate, so 3 senators, 3 from the House of Representatives from the Speaker, 3 appointees by the Governor, and then the head of every agency that deals with children. So DSS, DJJ, Children's Advocacy, all the way down the road. I joined that committee, and I'm now chairman of that committee, as well as chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on Child Welfare. Anything that deals with child welfare comes through my committee that I chair. So Alan's ICAC task force, the Internet Crimes Against Children, came to us and said, we got a real problem. We are arresting child exploitation pedophiles who were trading in images of children, having sex with adults. And what we're finding from a defense standpoint is that their defense attorneys are saying, you don't have to like it, but those aren't real children. Those are AI-generated morphed images. We take 1,000 images of real children, we run it through an AI algorithm, and it generates a new child. And what we're trading in and selling are AI-generated images. And if I showed you 100 of them, you couldn't pick out the 10 that were AI-generated. They look absolutely real. So we realized this was feeding a habit, and his Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force brought that to us. We were able to pass the legislation that says if a reasonable person can believe that that's a representation of a real child, we can still prosecute you. And I am so pleased to say that we now are arresting and successfully prosecuting people who are trading in images, who are trying to use as the defense. It's a AI-generated image. It's not real, so there is no victim. Because what it was doing is feeding a habit for pedophilia. That's how we met Alan, and that's the kind of man that he is, because he focuses on what is going to be in the best interest of families and children. You think of it?
You have much support, and if you got to get the okay of the legislature to do these things.
That's right. He is so correct. Oftentimes, and I encourage you, when you hear gubernatorial candidates tell you that I'm going to do this for you, and I'll do this for you, and I'll do this for you, please don't just buy it. The governor in South Carolina is not like the governor in Florida. We are a legislative state. Florida is a gubernatorial state. The majority of the power in this state runs with our with our legislative branch, because the governor has a veto ability, but the legislature has the power of the purse strings. House Ways and Means Committee is in the Senate Finance Committee. They are the ones who control the budgets. So if you want to neuter a governor, what they can do is take his cabinet position salary down to $1, which has been done before.
That's because of Ben Tillman.
That's exactly right. He got it exactly right. So the point he's making, which is such a good point, the governor has to work in conjunction with the legislature, because you've got to get the bills passed for the governor to then sign them. And you also need to work in conjunction with the judicial branch, Because if it's ruled unconstitutional, it just gets overturned. Like, I'm very, very pro-life, because I do believe that Beverly at 14 had every reason to abort me. And there's a lot of Beverlys out there who would have snuffed out my opportunity. Life isn't easy. I'm fallible, but I at least had a chance. And now I've got a son and daughter who are, because Beverly chose life for me. So I'm pro-life, but the heartbeat bill is a good example. Passed the heartbeat bill, the governor signed it. What happened? Supreme Court overruled it. It takes all three branches of government, which is another reason why it makes Alan and I such a formidable approach, is because as a senator who chairs a committee, who is in the caucus every day, I have the ability of returning to the Senate caucus and talking to my colleagues, talking with my House colleagues, to say, tell us what's important to you. Come meet with the governor and let's figure this out together, because it takes both sides, and we can't have one side trying to run roughshod over the other. What real authority the governor does have, they can make cabinet positions. They have the ability of the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Transportation. Those are the important roles, but they are still with advice and consent of the legislature, of the Senate right there. So we have to work in conjunction. That's such a good point that people need to realize that you can't do anything in a silo. Question here.
This is kind of a description and a question. How do we get policy in this state changed where it's not such a mommy state? As my family got beat up by the family court system trying to rescue our grandkids, and it cost me a lot of money. Our daughter, our former daughter-in-law, fell in love with whatever you could crush up and put in a needle. And it seemed like in this state, the woman has to almost be a serial killer before the family court system will automatically award custody to the father. Is that a policy that you guys see needs fixing, or is that on your radar screen, or what?
Yeah, first of all, I'm very sorry that your family went through that.
It's out of bounds.
Yeah.
That's a corollary, or another thing is drugs in this state it is way too easy to get drugs in this state.
Yeah. Again, I am very sorry you went through that. We have addressed that, and here's how we address it, because it applies to really two different areas, to family court as well as to DSS. And both have one of the same fundamental issues, is that in too often occasions we have folks who don't ask one single question when they make a decision. You know what that question is?
What's that?
What is in the best interest of the child?
Well, we just thought it common sense.
You would think so, but there are folks who they don't. You're shaking your head. I bet you know people.
I've been
Go-
through it.
go-
We got to the job in North Carolina.
Okay,
We
go.
need to go to North
That's
Carolina.
right. Yeah.
We started here at Saluda.
That's right. Go through DSS and go through the foster care system. Go through the family court, and you'll find people who will say, "Well, that daughter, or the former daughter-in-law, she had a pretty tough life. Things are tough. Give her another chance. You know, I think moms are better than dads. I think they're more nurturing." I've heard them all. But if you ask the question, I never heard it for a time. I'm sorry.
I was looking.
If we ask the question of what is in the best interest of the child, I don't believe any reasonable judge who's going to follow the rule of law could look at it and say a drug-addled mother is preferred to a responsible father. It just doesn't make sense. But that's an example of where that family court judge should be held accountable for that decision.
Well, we had to go through the system beat us up.
That's right.
It waited to get to a hearing and for a judge, but in the meantime, our granddaughter was whisked away with a sheriff's deputy having to do it and hand her over to her drug addict mother, and we didn't know where she was. 3 years old, we were so afraid she was going to get
That's right.
to a child, a pedophile.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
I'm not impugning everyone in DSS. There's some good, hardworking people in the family court system, in the probate system. But there are also those who have done it too long, and they don't ask the right question of what is in the best interest of the child. Because there are frankly people who they can create and birth children. They have no business trying to raise them. They have abdicated their responsibility by the decision they make. And if you're going to choose a life of drugs and alcohol and abuse, there's a point, well, I can feel bad for you, but you don't get to keep your children in that situation. And we've got to lead with what is in the best interest of the child. And that is something that Al and I are passionate about. That's the whole reason for his Internet Crimes Against Children task force, is to say what's in the best interest of the child. Because candidly, there were some legislators who were lawyers who said, let's step back. Isn't that First Amendment? That's free speech. You don't have to like it, but that's free speech to have a grown man having sex with a 10-year-old, because it's not a real child. And there's a point when you have to say, free speech only goes as far as you are now harming society. And that image of a reasonable representation of a child is feeding a habit. So no, you don't get to say that's covered just because you like it. Those are the type of situations when we have to ask the question, the best interest of the child. I'm sorry for what you're going through, but that's got to be the focus.
It took a while to get through the situation,
Yeah.
but there's so many other.
There are a lot of them,
horror
right?
stories out
We have time for
One more question.
Regarding South Carolina, what keeps you up at night? What concerns in South Carolina just keeps you up at night?
That's such a good question. I do a lot of these. I've never had that question. I'm serious, I've never had that question. That's one of the best questions I've ever answered. So I'm not going to give you a flippant answer. I'm going to take a moment. There are a lot of things. I would say one of the first that would come to mind is energy. Because in February, when you got the letter from the governor that said we need to regulate our energy usage because those really cold days, we were on the cusp of having rolling brownouts. And brownouts and blackouts, what that does to society, the lawlessness, the abuse, the violence, the folks that will break into cars. It isn't just about being inconvenienced because your lights flicker. With a state that was in 2000, 4 million people, we ended 2025 at 5.7, and in 2030 we'll be at 6 million. We have added 50% more people in the same geography in 30 years, but we have had no additional energy production because of VC Summer. Remember that VC Summer, the nuclear plants, when those failed, we lost our energy, those nuclear plants. So if you put 10 pounds of potatoes in a 6-pound bag, eventually the seams rip. My concern is energy isn't considered like infrastructure with the roads where you can feel it, or the bridges. Energy is one of those unseen. When you turn the light on, everyone just thinks it's going to come on. When that doesn't come on, the forecast from many experts in like emergency management says that by about the second night, there will be looters, there will be violence, and there's a point where you got to expect law enforcement to say, I got to take care of my family. And then you're talking about National Guard. We have to worry about, do we have the energy production to meet the demand when you go from 4 million to 6 million people? Because the consequences will end in lives being lost if we don't.
Yes, correct.
You need to go into data centers.
Oh my goodness. He said,
Data
Go
centers,
ahead, go ahead.
right, one more?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay.
data centers coming to South Carolina. Will your administration require the data centers to make their own power companies
Beautiful.
and not pull off of our existing power companies?
Beautiful. So what he's talking about is base load capacity. Our position, and Al and I have both answered this collectively and individually. Data centers, if they are wanted by their community, Marion County is a good example. Marion County has an opportunity of adding $22 million to their county budget. So Marion County just decided they want it, which is fine. That's Marion County's right. The Ace Basin, they don't want it. Charleston County, that's their option. But wherever it goes, that data center has to produce their own energy. And that additional base load demand that they produce, they can sell it back to Duke or Dominion, but they cannot, and forgive the parlance, but they cannot suck off the teat of regular taxpayers, regular consumers who we need that energy demand. But they want to come here and use our energy, and then when the time comes that there's brownouts and there's blackouts, they get to wash their hands of that. Data centers want to come, they got to pay their own way. Okay. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. We'll be around if you want to talk afterwards, but I love the opportunity. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for what you're doing for South Carolina by paying attention.
Great, and what I love
Reichenbach?
Reichenbach. Reichenbach. By the way, we do have 100% of the black vote in South Carolina. We got it all. It's me and my wife, so the whole demographic. So it might be a demographic.
But we may send you some other questions to put on our website, because you're very interesting. I have questions myself, but.
I would love to answer your questions. I know. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.